Welcome to week 6 and my favorite topic, community wealth building, otherwise known as social entrepreneurship, otherwise known by many means. So as you have been discovering throughout these various topics, what we're talking about is a new environment for nonprofits to not just exist in but to thrive in. And many of the nonprofit organizations that are doing much better even through the downturn of the economy, have embraced this new concept of social entrepreneurship, which takes in all of what we're going to speak about. But as your text begins on chapter 14 with earned income strategy, focusing on the diversification of funding sources using business-like tactics and undertaking business-like ventures and approaches to diversifying income, not just relying on charity and donations. This goes by many names: social entrepreneurship, social enterprise, nonprofit business venture, earned income, community wealth building, revenue generating through profitable enterprises, promoting social change. I first came in contact with this concept, interestingly enough, when I was working for USAID in the mid-90s after the wall had fallen in Europe. I was sent to Russia via a program from UCR to try to teach folks how to start nonprofit organizations. And while in St. Petersburg, I encountered a lady who was basically gathering up wheelchairs. Her son was disabled, and she had volunteers who were repairing the wheelchairs, selling them at a small profit, and using the profits basically to provide supportive counseling, group, family services to the families of those who were disabled. There was no word for it at that time. And when I first encountered it, I said, wow, this is really different. Now, they didn't have a nonprofit law or anything, so they were just trying to create more mission with basic approaches that they could pull together. But this was the beginning of this movement, as well as if you look at some of the videos I provided for you, Muhammad Yunus and his efforts in Pakistan. He's generally considered the father of all of this, with his attempts to and successes in establishing Grameen Bank. Earned income strategies are a little different than the social enterprises we will talk about in the second chapter, but there are different ways that this takes shape. It can be partnerships with businesses where you advance the goals of both parties, either through licensing, sponsorship, cause-related marketing, or some operational product that works for all. You're seeing a lot of this, especially as corporations want to show that they are good civic contributors. And actually, this is a good thing in our society. And the more you can tap into it, the better it is. But it does need a higher level type of involvement. And I hope you watch the Dan Pallotta TED Talks about his approach to all of this. Partnership factors that have to exist for this to work with corporations. It has to be conducive, has to be a good fit and a connection between the company's interests and goals and the MPO mission and programs. The obstacles is there could be different communication patterns, corporate cultures that are different, status, worldviews, bottom line. You see this happen a lot with Hollywood types, where they sponsor something and then something happens in their lives that is not too cool, and the nonprofit or the cause has to pull away from them. We live in a very high-profile culture, and sometimes this doesn't always work out quite well. NPO business ventures usually have to do with services, can be making something, manufacturing, as well as distribution or retail. I have a mobile fresh bus, which I hope you take a look at in the videos on my website. This is combining a lot of this, as well as in terms of services. There are things called management service organizations, where one nonprofit tries to provide administrative services to another nonprofit for a fee, which furthers the mission of both organizations. NPO business opportunities. Nonprofit organizations often feel as unempowered as the clients they serve, but everyone has assets, including these organizations. And I love the chart on page 382, figure 14.3, which talks about some of the assets that nonprofits have, both in terms of what they have as assets, what they do, and what they know are all, the intellectual capital that we have. That's why even in politics, when I got elected to elective office, I had a lot of knowledge capital of having worked with every community group in the area that was certainly marketable, not just as a politician, but certainly helps in terms of the nonprofit. The market opportunity, what is the niche that the organization can occupy, and the capacity, staff skills, and resources. Like any organization, though, a feasibility analysis and business plan is necessary, and page 383 has a good explanation and synopsis of that. The issues and decisions that come into play in this approach are interesting, and they are what turns some people off to this approach, because in determining the market in a pure capitalistic sense, sometimes that means serving the few versus the many for a price. So do you serve just high-end clients in order to make enough money to make a go of this, or are you going to be egalitarian and spread it out to everyone? What kind of influence will the corporation have if you get into bed with them? Are they going to be able to dictate to you what you can or cannot do? What's an evaluation of the benefits? Does it really enhance mission, or is it just freelancing and doing things that maybe even cost money, as in mission versus the profitability, which is an important evaluation. And finally, the biggest one that turns people off is that they see this as somehow commercializing the nonprofit sector and taking out of its really impetus for being mission driven. But I think at the end of the day, in this day and age, you have to do this in order to have a balanced portfolio of revenue streams so that you can increase your mission, and ultimately that is a good thing. Chapter 16 gets a little more into, these are more from some factors that I would want you to keep in mind. This comes from some texts that I use in teaching social entrepreneurship. It has to be with the feasibility. So a good earned income strategy will take into account both mission and financial goals and balance the two. It's about opportunity, which entrepreneurs always seek. And this is not a character trait. I know we've been taught to think that it's someone like a Steve Jobs or someone else who has these particular abilities. Opportunity orientation can be learned, and the things to look for are being on the lookout, innovating, new patterns, trends, networking, and unintended events. The bottom line, you're strategic, you meet the demand from the outside world with the mission of the organization, and you maximize your social market and sustainability potential. Always seeking competitive advantage, and going back to our discussion on strategic planning, matching that internal strength with external opportunity is a winner. Risk is always an issue in these factors, and these are some of the ways, risk and uncertainties. The first one is always, how much money am I going to lose? That's what the board will always ask first. But there are ways to mitigate that, because the upside is you diversify your revenue capital. You might discover new ways to pursue mission. and you might redefine your social return. And the factors to be aware of is quality of management, quality of the workforce, your skills, your strengths, what's happening in the marketplace. All these things we talk about in terms of marketing and positioning. But at the end of the day, if I had to choose between just sitting back and doing what I've done for 50 years or taking risks to push the envelope, I believe that taking risks on behalf of those you serve is a good thing, not something to be avoided. Social entrepreneurship chapter gets a little more into this. This is the worldwide phenomena. It's not just about a product, it's about a process. You've heard of Tom's Shoes. It's even happening from the for-profit sector, where for-profits are doing good to enhance their bottom line. But the difference with social entrepreneurship is that we look to have impact and systemic change. And that's why if you look at my mobile fresh model, it's not just to deliver fresh produce to areas that are food deserts, it's to impact child poverty and obesity and health and financial empowerment of families to be able to feed their families and afford it. So this is a new kind of leadership, and social entrepreneurs, it's dependent on a lot of things. It's personal characteristics, it's being change agents, it's people who respond to crisis, shifting paradigms of how we can operate, and it's always about the interplay of who are you serving, what is the context that this is in, what is the deal that can be struck, and what is ultimately the opportunity here. Your text highlights 6 practices of social entrepreneurs, which are the kind of the general areas that I would take note of. The first is that they advocate and serve. They create big change. They make market work. So they look at what the customer's needs and wants are, and they make the markets work on behalf of the customers. I get a lot of funding in silos, and my goal is to serve families, so I have to cut across those silos to get it to work on behalf of those we're serving. It inspires evangelists. It creates converts. People get excited about this. It creates networks. These are people who master the art of adaptation. They don't take no for an answer. They problem solve. They're flexible. They're adaptable. And ultimately, they know how to share leadership. This is from a book that Peter Drucker wrote, which I'm not going to be able to go into. I don't have a lot of time. But this kind of turns it upside down of looking at what are common definitions of entrepreneurship into looking at some of the ways your chapter described it, that it's about embracing change and creating creative destruction to create change. And Drucker identified the 7 sources of innovation, the unexpected event, the incongruent between the way things are, innovation based on the obvious, changes in the market, such as healthcare and financial recession of the past 10 years, change demographics, which of course in California we are very predominantly impacted by, and changes in perception, mood, and meaning, and new knowledge, which is unbelievably prevalent in our day and age. This is my philosophy, which guides my organization in actually applying social entrepreneurship strategy. And these are some of the things from another text I use in this concept, which reinforces the ones in your chapter about being innovative, being opportunity oriented, being resourceful. These entrepreneurs don't worry about whether they have the resources or not. They go out and do it. You know that old Nike commercial, just do it. They create value for markets, for customers, for clients, and most of all, they want to change the world. These are the ways they do it: introducing new products, tapping into new sources, new organizational structures. This is a very dynamic concept. I'm sorry we only have one chapter and one opportunity to discuss it, but I hope this gives you a little flavor of what we're talking about.